Welcome to Legal Masterminds at Law Leaders. I'm your host, Dustin Rugi, and today we're going to be talking about a new groundbreaking system that may very well change how attorneys manage client referrals and referral fees moving forward. Joining me today is Ari Feruzman, who is the co-founder and CEO of the company behind these changes called Overture Law. And just a little background on Aria. Aria is a graduate of UCLA Law School, was a legal writing and research instructor at Cal State University, Los Angeles, founding partner of L&F Brown PC, co-founder of Biz Counsel, and now co-founder and CEO of Overture Law, which we're going to be talking about today. So Aria, thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you with us.
Dustin, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And wanted to jump in just initially on, let's get started better understanding what is Overture Law, the company that you co-founded, and what are the primary pain points that you're addressing or trying to solve now with this service?
Sure. Overture, is simply put, is an attorney-to-attorney referral platform for great independent attorneys from all over the country to refer work that they can't service for whatever reason. And if they can monetize those referrals through referral fees, then all the better. And the story behind Overture was, frankly, it was something that we needed in our own practice. As you mentioned, I've built a few different companies prior to Overture with my co-founders here. And the chief problem we kept running into was we had clients who needed help in parts of the country we weren't in practice areas we weren't well versed in. And we just got tired of saying no. So we said, why don't we build a platform to help great independent attorneys refer work when they can't service those clients?
Yeah. And referral fees have been obviously a complicated issue for attorneys for a long time. I know you and I recently had a conversation about this and how we continue to hear this come up in legal groups over and over again. So you just alluded to the fact of where you saw that problem, but when did you decide that that was something that could be better addressed? How did you come to that kind of epiphany?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I spent a good deal of time with me, Kurt, and Brian. Kurt's been a co-founder, and so is Brian. Kurt I've known since law school, and Brian, of course, started LegalZoom back in 2000, and we've been working together on different projects over the last 7 years. We spent a good deal of time in the plaintiff's world, and really, as any plaintiff's lawyer knows, referral fees is just a part of life. That's something that's the lifeblood of their business that brings in work from great attorneys in their networks. And so we saw how that worked very, very well in the plaintiff's world. And then when we transitioned over into a company called Biz Counsel, which services small businesses, and we service them on subscription, and we built that up, we realized, all of these small business owners need help all over the country for things even outside of business. And referral fees just weren't a part of that world. So we said, how can we not only build a network so that we can find a home for these great clients, whether those needs are business or wills and trusts or family law or even back to PI, but can we bring that sophistication that the plaintiff's world knows very, very well in terms of referral fees and the ethical sharing of fees between lawyers, and bringing that to areas of law that traditionally have never done that?
Yep. No, that's great. You had also just mentioned a moment ago, Brian Liu, who is the co-founder of LegalZoom. And that's a company that obviously people are very familiar with, and a name that people are very familiar with. How did you originally, how did Brian become involved with this venture, and what is his role with the venture today?
Yeah, it's a great question. Brian, Kurt, and I have been working together for the last 7 years. We've been, just taking our path and seeing where the wind takes us. Like I said, we started in the plaintiff's world, got into the weeds there, and then we saw an opportunity to get back into the business world where Brian obviously knew very well. And now with Overture, he's here every day working with us, trying to solve these problems that we're all seeing. But the truth is, I think with Overture, it was never something we intended on building, right? We were just attorneys who continually ran into this problem. And as we asked our colleagues and said, do you guys have problems with finding great homes for these clients? And we realized this problem wasn't unique to us. And it got so much worse during the last few years with the pandemic and clients spreading out all over the country. We realized this was just too good of an opportunity for us to pass up on. And so that's why we started Overture. So I think that's the one out of everything we've built where we really see there's potential to change the way solo small firms work together. And that's, I think, what gets us all really excited, including Brian.
Sure, absolutely. Another part of this was, as you know, most states follow various forms of ABA Model Rule 1.5e when it comes to fees and responsibilities, but each state kind of has its own variation to it, or different ways they implement it. How does Overture address this issue, especially for matters that require interstate referrals, as you talked about a moment ago, where the attorneys of one state may not be familiar with each state's conduct and how it pertains to referrals and referral fees?
Yeah. So as you correctly mentioned, most states either follow some version of the ABA Model Rule 1.5e. Other states follow some of the rules like California's pure referral rules. And so our job at Overture is trying to make that process simpler for the attorneys that are part of the network, right? So we've built tools to ensure that folks can post referrals, find great homes, chat with other attorneys on the platform. We don't get in the middle of that process of the attorney finding the right home for their client. Where we get involved is ensuring that we get the right disclosures to the client to ensure that we can ethically share in fees. So to that end, we've built e-sign into our platform so that the attorney can upload their own engagement agreement as is. We don't make any modifications to that engagement agreement. But the reason we ask them to send it from our side is that we can ensure that the system creates the Overture addendum with the necessary disclosures that allow us to ethically share in fees. So before we move $1 to anybody's bank account, we're 100% sure that the client has reviewed and signed off on the correct disclosures so that we can ethically share in fees with all of our members.
Excellent. Good. Historically, as you know, most attorneys referrals happen intrastate. It's mostly geographic centers of activity. Attorneys work within the states or cities and things like that. And that's largely the world that they've been a part of. But now that, as you mentioned before, with COVID that happened and everything, and this dispersion of the workforce throughout the United States, what kind of interstate referral activity are you seeing now currently with your service? And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, what percentage are you actually seeing with this service that would apply to interstate type activity?
It's an interesting question because you're seeing almost an even split of activity where a business owner that's been serviced by one attorney in that state for years, maybe even decades, now has all these issues in different states and they need counsel to help them solve those issues in those states. Let's say they have a dispute in another state, they're going to need a litigator in that state. You're also seeing, I think, equally, those attorneys previously getting requests from those same clients for a wills and trust attorney. Do you know a family law attorney in this neck of the woods? I have a family member who needs a criminal help, or they got into an accident, and you start realizing they need help for those as well. So, in our world in building this, we weren't sure exactly what world we would be helping the most, and we realized it's actually both. People need more diversity in terms of the practice areas that they can assist for their clients locally, and they need symmetrical coverage for practice areas that they service in different states as well. If you think about it, what we're trying to build really is the same model that big firms have really solidified for decades, right? Come into any partner at the firm, and no matter what you need, we have somebody in some office who can assist you. And if we can empower solo small firm attorneys to have that same network at their disposal where they can turn to them and say, you know what, client, I don't do that, but I'm confident I can find you someone great who can. That gives them the same power that those big firm attorneys have while still maintaining your independence as a solo or small firm.
Excellent. Good. As you alluded to earlier, historically, referral fees have been the purview of largely of contingency fee attorneys, contingency matters. But what's interesting, as you mentioned before, now you're moving into the transactional side of that. However, I want to stay on the trend or the contingency side for a moment, because one of the things that we've typically seen in the past is that many of these contingency matters can run years and sometimes over a decade, if you will, before payment has actually taken place, which means it's very hard for the attorneys to systematically track and keep up with most of these types of matters as the attorney. So how would your service assist them in that process? Whereas now it's largely a hope and pray type process, unless they really have systems behind them that can track this stuff, which most attorneys don't seem to have.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think when some attorneys are referring consistently to one or two firms, they usually tend to have a good good grasp on how that works. The challenge is when you have those one-offs to Nebraska PI or a workers' comp in Florida when you're in California. How do you keep track of all those? You can do a few, you can do 2, 3 of those, but when it gets up in number, not only one, you need to make sure that you have the client signed, the client received the right disclosures, and your referral fees guaranteed. In that sense, that's the first part that most attorneys frankly miss, and they hope and pray that it works out in the end and they'll get a check someday in the mail. But the difference is with Overture is you have our team in the middle checking in, ensuring that those matters are taken care of. When that disbursement happens, we're in the middle of the process to make sure your referral fee comes to you, is signed and paid, and the matters closed correctly. From our experience in the plaintiff's world, we've realized most attorneys want to do the right thing. It's just we get so busy and there's so much going forward. If we can be that central force between the referring attorney and the handling attorney to make sure everything's done correctly, I think that's a big load off of every practitioner out there.
Right. Excellent. Going back to the source of referral fees, as we talked about, this has been a topic for a long time with attorney. One of the primary reasons why people ask for referrals, whether it be from attorneys or anybody else, is largely because of the trust of the referring source. And how does Overture address this issue so both attorneys and their clients know that the referral that they receive isn't from just any attorney, but rather a more credible and trusted source?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, even building this platform for ourselves, we knew that we wouldn't, as lawyers and law firm owners, wouldn't refer to just anybody throughout the country. And what we learned from servicing thousands of businesses at our previous ventures is the thing that separates good attorneys from great attorneys is the client service. Remembering that we're in the customer service business, remembering that we need to be responsive to our clients and their needs. And those are the attorneys that really stand out, right? And so when we built the platform, we said, we're going to focus on the technology. And I think we've built a ton of great technology to streamline the referral process, from posting to e-sign to even billing. But the key also behind it is having a network of people that are vetted and everyone trusts, right? And so not only do we ask everyone to apply, they have to provide us with a reference that we reach out to. We go through, obviously, their offline review, making sure there's no bar complaints, that they've have experience in a specific area of law, they've been practicing for a sufficient period of time, all of those things that are easy to do online. But we actually interview every single person, and we're looking to see, are they somebody that's cut from the same cloth as we are? Are they somebody who recognizes we're in customer service, or do they talk about clients like a necessary evil that they have to put up with? And that's what separates Overture, I think, from anything else out there. We're really trying to find a group of folks that, even though we're all independent, you start to feel like we all have the same values. We're all part of the same firm. And that's what builds that trust, that when you refer a matter from Los Angeles, where I am, to Miami, all the way across the other part of the country, you may not know that attorney specifically, but you know that they went through the exact same process that you have to become a member. And that's what builds that trust.
Excellent. Another issue that typically comes up surrounding referrals or dealing with, or referral fee splitting for that matter, as potential issues is in the legal world around potential conflicts of interest, transparency, and client consent. How do you address those matters at Overture?
Yeah, and that was one of the questions we got in the early days from attorneys, right, who've never done fee splitting, is how do I know that I'm getting the correct amount? How do I know that the client is signing off on the correct disclosures? And so really that gave us the idea for Overture to be that central point of transparency between all the members. We ask our attorneys to send their engagement agreements through our system. We ask that bills go through our side. Why? Not to be a pain, but to be that central point of trust and transparency between the two attorneys. So as that engagement agreement gets sent out, we can ensure that we have the right disclosures in there. As those bills go out from our system, as they're ready to disperse, we can take everyone's share of the fees and direct deposit them direct to their bank account. So there's no need to call this attorney and say, Joe, remember you promised me a referral fee, you owe me X amount of money, have them cut a check. Again, you can do that with one or two folks, but once you start getting to 5, 10, 15, 20 matters, right, you have to hire a full-time admin person just to keep track of all that. So being that central point, providing that transparency for all the members, means that it's just as easy to share a referral that's a few $1,000s in total fees as it is to share a referral that's hundreds of thousands in fees. And that was the goal of the platform.
Got it. Now that we're on the topic of fees, let's jump into costs as well, because I'm sure a lot of attorneys are wondering that as well. And so how are the costs structured at Overture Law Service? Is there an initial fee? Are there fees distributed and managed through the service? How is that done today?
Yeah, that's the question that every attorney is always asking us, right? And it's my
Right.
favorite part of sharing, right? When I tell people that there's no cost to join the platform. And I think when attorneys hear that, they always think, what's the catch, right? And
Sure.
that's how
Yeah.
we're trained to think. And I get that. And I think the thinking is we could have always charged a fee for folks to join. But again, we built this for ourselves as practitioners. And I said, I wanted our incentives to be aligned with the members. We want good members. I'm not promising anyone millions of dollars of work coming in or going out, but I want good members to be here that believe in what we're building to empower solo and small firms. And the way Overture makes money is when you make money. So we're set up as a law firm. And so we take a percentage of the referrals as they go through the platform. So as the referring attorney is finding a great home for a client that they can't service, and they're able to monetize that referral, handling attorney is able to take on a great client, generate extra income for their firm. Overture is taking a fee in the middle as well. And so it's truly a win-win-win, which is a rare thing to be providing in the world of law. And so it's a very, it's something that we don't really have to sell too hard. We tell folks, if this is a good fit for you and your firm and your clients, we'd love to have that conversation. And if it isn't, that's okay as well. We're building very, very quickly. We're adding 100 to 150 attorneys a month. And growing that number every single month. But it's really the ground floor of where we're at. But if attorneys believe in the mission of what we're doing, I think it's a very easy conversation from there.
Sure. Absolutely. And when you're structuring those fee splits, is there inherently a different structure between transactional and contingency, or are they the same type of structure?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And in the beginning, we thought only transactional attorneys needed this. We thought the contingency fee attorneys, they figured it out. They've been doing this since the 1970s. And so we had started with just one structure for the billable hour flat fee folks, and then realized we needed a secondary structure when the contingency fee attorneys wanted to be here as well. And we realized the demand from the hourly, the flat fee folks to refer contingency matters, even locally or across the country. So we have two different frameworks, one for the hourly and flat fee world, one for the contingency fee world, because frankly, we're not doing all the billing, trust accounting, trust reconciliation on that contingency fee side. And so we've built two structures that are static, such that everyone knows what the referral fees are when they're using the platform. It doesn't matter if you send it to Joe or Brian or Kurt. It doesn't matter who you pick, you're going to get the same fee regardless. And so that ensures that your focus when you're referring a client isn't on who's going to give me the most percentage. It's on finding the right home for your client.
Got it. You just mentioned a moment ago, obviously you're having some very successful sales and new attorneys coming on board. That's great. Congratulations. And now that you've had that kind of clip or the amount of people coming on board, what are the most commonly asked questions that you're receiving from these attorneys when these new attorneys, when they come on board, and how would you address those?
Yeah, it's a great question as well. I think in the early days, it was, again, the questions that we were all addressing is, how can you do this, right? I thought referral fees were illegal. We can't share in fees. And so in the early days, it was about explaining how we're not doing anything unique. I wish we were doing something unique. We took the sophistication that the plaintiff's bar has used for decades and just introduced it to other areas of law. But these days, the focus is on the mechanics of how the platform works, which is really exciting to see. When I get those questions, and those are the common questions, that tells me that we've overcome that burden and that hurdle of, hey, can we do this? And now how can we do this better? What are the ways that you're doing this? And how can I integrate this into my practice better so it becomes more streamlined? And that's a real turning point for us, because it's showing that people believe in this, they're adopting this, and they're seeing the utility, not just for them and their practice, but for their clients, really.
Yep. And any other questions? One of the questions that came up in my mind is, how much time does it take to develop this system? Because this doesn't sound like a small undertaking, and you clearly got some horsepower behind you with your partners in the business. So maybe you can give everybody an idea as well as to what was this undertaking? How big was it?
Yeah, we spent about a year building the technology behind it before we even brought on our first member. And I think the unique part was we were building this as users of the platform ourselves, right? We have our own law firm, me, Kurt, and Brian, that does business and real estate litigation in California and Texas. And so we use them kind of as our test subjects. We would send it to them, get their feedback. And so we really wanted to craft a product that wasn't beta. We weren't launching just something out in the wild and to see what happened. We knew that people are referring their trusted clients from one part of the country to the other, and it needed to work every single time. So before we even launched it to the public, we spent 6 months with friends and family just to make sure that was as tight as we could make it. So it's probably been a year and a half, 2 years of development before it even saw the bright lights for folks to see and interact with. And I think that's evident when folks start seeing it and playing around with it. To that end, I think we're so proud of what we built. We give folks any attorney can create a limited account and see a preview of how the platform works, because seeing is believing. And especially when you're doing something that feels very new. Again, I don't think it is. We just took it from one area of law, brought it to the other. But I think when it feels new like that, seeing is believing. And when you see that these are real people using it to find homes for their clients and vice versa, that's when you say, wow, this is a great tool that I could use as well.
Sure. Now, is this service available in all 50 states currently?
It is available in 48 states.
48 states.
Wyoming and Hawaii are two states we don't operate in. To your point about the referral fee rules in every state, those are two states that have taken the ABA model rule and ratcheted it up in intensity. And while when we were building this, we discussed with Ethics Council of ways we can get around that rule, we decided we didn't want to, because if we weren't 100% confident in what we were doing, we didn't want to launch with that in mind. Could we add Wyoming and Hawaii in the future? I'm sure we will, but we wanted to make sure that at least we're doing it for the 48 states, and we're holding those back as we launch the product.
Understood. Okay, very good. You had mentioned a moment ago when you show everybody the system, so maybe you could walk us through, if an attorney is interested in signing up and using Overture, how do they qualify to do this, and how long does it take for them to sign up and for you to show them the system? Give us an idea, because obviously time is money for attorneys, right?
Of course.
So, yeah.
Of course. And so we didn't want to take any more time than we had to, while ensuring, again, that the attorneys are vetted and quality, and we believe strongly in them. So anyone who is interested, any attorney that is, who's interested in joining, can go to overture.law. They can create an account and, again, see the platform. If it's of interest to you and you find it of value to you and your clients, then you can apply. Application takes about 2-3 minutes. You'd schedule an interview with me, my team. We've brought on a good deal of attorneys to help with that interview process, because I think who better than an attorney to evaluate other attorneys across the country. That takes about 20-30 minutes. And then if you are approved to join, then you would sit in on an onboarding where you'd see the platform from A to Z, about 20-30 minutes there. So you know how to use it when that day comes. And then you're all set to go. So all in all, a couple phone calls and a little bit of time chatting with us. But I think there's no substitute for ensuring that these are real people that we would want to work with, other than just by chatting with them. And so while we can't fly to everybody and meet them in person and have a cup of coffee, this is the next best thing.
Excellent. Well, obviously, it's a very valuable service. It's a topic that, as we mentioned before, comes up a lot in these circles when you're talking to attorneys, and this really is groundbreaking. And I don't think it's a surprise to any of us within the industry to know that the success that you're having with the service. And anything else that anybody should be aware of before they drop off this video?
I think we've gone through pretty much everything. It's referral fees are one of the more arcane concepts. Everyone's always confused as to how they work. But I think once you start diving into the rules and realizing that there is a great way to do so, not only to help your clients find a great home, but monetize it along the way, I think everyone realizes, okay, this is a real win-win for everybody. So I would encourage everyone who's always been interested in how they work to really take a look at that. And to that end, we have a great resource on our site that breaks it down for every state. And I think you'll see it's a lot less scary when you dive into it as well.
And speaking of your site, where can they go to get started?
That's a great ending point. Overture.law. That's our website.
Overture.law. That's easy.
Exactly. So we made it as easy as possible. So go ahead. And the first thing you can do is create an account and see how it all works.
Excellent. Arya, this is exciting news. Thank you for joining us today. And I want to thank everybody who's watched this as well. If you like this video or you want to keep up with future innovations in the practice of law, please click or subscribe on the button below. And thanks for watching.